And so the saga, is it a saga? Continues. We're on the fourth one. Step closer. And on the back I read, empty feelings often attract hungry monsters. You know what? That's probably why everybody in the last episode. What's wrong with me? In the last stories, we're all depressed. So, yeah. Okay, so the 3 stories that are in this one are Step Closer. And the one in the middle is Dance With Me. And the one all the way at the end is, what is it? Coming Home. Okay. Those are pretty vague. All right. Moving on. Step Closer. We shall start this one today. I'm told this one's the best one. Maybe wrong. Okay. Foxy's yellow eyes glowed in the darkness of the room. His jaw hung open, flashing sharp teeth. Foxy lifted his hook and slashed its sharp tip in front of Pete's face, the hook whizzing by his nose. Pete rolled off the bed, his body shaking, his stomach pitched as he lay helpless on the floor, and Foxy pivoted, looking over him. The shifting of gears filled the room as Foxy swung up with his hook. You can be a pirate, but first you'll have to lose an eye and an arm. No, Pete breathed. I'm sorry, I'm reading a little fast today. Pardon. When Foxy slammed his hook down into Pete's eye, an audible pop sounded. Blood poured from his eye socket as Pete screamed. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was crowded with crazy little kids and their harassed idiot parents. Harassed? Okay, yeah. And their harassed idiot parents. Music bellowed through wall speakers, and arcade games pinged and vibrated. The scent of burnt pepperoni wafted through the air. Wafted through the air. Mixed with the scent of cotton candy. Pete was slouched against a wall, ankles crossed and ball cap turned backward. Why is it always those ugly-looking kids? Okay, drinking a cherry-flavored cola, while chewing watermelon gum. His little brother and his friends were crowded around an arcade game. Pete didn't want to be there, but his mother had to work and Chuck had to be with his friends after school again. So that left Pete to play babysitter. For the 100th time, he asked himself, why was it always his job? And was the little snot grateful? Nope. Chuck was always whining about his inhaler, always whining he was hungry, always asking a bunch of questions, always something. Since their dad had left, Pete was saddled with everything Chuck. His mom's words were stuck in his head. You're the man of the house now, Pete. Take care of your little brother. As every cliche mom would say. But I feel like that's what they all say. How was Pete supposed to be the man when he was just 16? Did anyone ask him what he thought of his new responsibilities? Double nope. Pete watched a little kid walk up to a couple of employees cleaning up birthday tables. He pulled on a guy's sleeve. The man looked down at the kid and smiled. Can I help you with something? He asked. I was wondering, where is Foxy the pirate? The kid said. The man's voice was syrupy sweet. Okay. Oh, Foxy's on vacation at the moment. We hope to have him back soon. The little kid stuck his lip out but nodded as he walked away. The other employee chuckled. Good one, he told the man. Yeah, on vacation in the maintenance room. Don't know when they'll bring the show out again. Pete was thinking that over when he realized someone was saying his name. Pete, he pulled his attention from the conversation and moved his gaze toward Maria I don't even know what I'm trying to say. Okay. Maria Rodriguez. Maria Rodriguez. Tongue twister. Say that 3 times. Maria Rodriguez. who was standing beside him. Her black hair brushed her shoulders, and her lips were glossy red. Cliche much. She had these bright green eyes with long lashes and a few freckles on her nose. She was a cheerleader at their high school, and he'd known her since the 6th grade. So why did he suddenly feel so nervous around her? Oh, it's one of those. Moving on. Hey, Maria, he said. Stuck here with little Chucky, huh? Pete scowled. Yeah. Same here, my little sister's birthday. Maria motioned to a birthday table in front of the stage, with little kids wearing cone hats and eating cake. Can't believe we used to be like them. He smirked. Don't know about you, but I was never like that. Maria smiled. Sure. So, where you been? Weird noises. Okay. I believe that's Sal. All right. Sal, would you please stop making noises? Sal! Moving on. Sure, so where you been? Haven't seen you at practice lately. He'd been benched from football for unnecessary roughness and having a bad attitude on multiple occasions. Hello? This was... I don't know what I'm reading. Hold on. Hello? This was football. The way they worded it was weird. Okay. It's not like someone's saying something. It's just... Okay. Hello? This was football. So he just quit altogether. The truth was, Pete never used to quit anything. He used to finish whatever he started. But after seeing his parents quit each other, finishing things didn't matter so much anymore. Plus, he didn't need any more grief from the coach. He got enough of that from his teachers and his mom. A kid could only handle so much gripping. He shrugged. Got tired of it all, you know? Yeah, I guess. So, what are you going to do with all your free time now? Well, ... Dialogue. Someone waved to Maria from the party table and her face lit up. Yes, finally time to leave. Before she left, she added, Hey, a bunch of us are meeting under Old Beacon Bridge if you want to come to hang out later. Oh, it's one of those. Pete smiled. Yeah? She nodded. It'll be fun. Then he shook his head. Can't. I have to watch Chuck the Chump. Oh, okay. Maybe next time. See you around school. Irritation. What is with me today, man? Come on, get yourself together. All right. Irritation washed over Pete as he watched Maria walk away. This was all Chuck's fault, little brat. Everything was always about his little brother. Didn't matter what Pete wanted because nothing mattered when it came to Pete. Dad had left. Mom was in her own little world. They figured they just put Pete in charge of Chuck because they didn't have the time to deal with him themselves. But Pete had never signed up to take over their responsibilities. He was a kid, and kids should be free, not worrying about stuff. They should be able to do what they wanted, like hanging out with other kids instead of watching little brothers. But his parents didn't care about any of that, obviously. After all, they never asked Pete if he had wanted them to split up in the first place. They just divorced, and that was that. None of it was fair. Pete had so many emotions inside of him that sometimes he just didn't know what to do with them. Sometimes he felt like a ticking bomb about to explode. Like the tension in his body was just under his skin, begging for release. For a while, football had helped. He'd been a beast on the field, taking down players, throwing people out of the way. By the end of practice, he'd been exhausted and empty. Empty was better. It was good. But since he was off the team, Pete was stuck without an outlet. He hated these feelings. He hated everything sometimes. He watched his brother break off from his friends to head to the bathroom, and his eyes narrowed on the fresh opportunity. Okay, that was kind of a quick change. Pete tossed his soda at an empty table and walked quickly to his brother's side, latching onto his arm forcefully. Chuck's face screwed up. Ow, Pete. Shut up and walk, he muttered, then blew a bubble till it popped. Why? Where are we going? Oh, because he had watermelon gum. Okay. Why? Where are we going? You'll see. With a quick look over his shoulder, Pete hustled his little brother down a long and darkened corridor. The floor was faded and old, and peeling posters of animatronics lined the walls. Okay, the place needed a serious upgrade. Pete had wandered down here before and discovered the large maintenance room. Now that he knew what was taking a vacation inside, he couldn't wait to take Chuck along for a little venture. Oh, yeah, because he heard the other guys talking about, oh, yeah, the animatronic in there just chilling because he needs work done. Moving on. Considering his brother had always been scared of a certain animatronic. See, what? What's with y'all, man? And messing with people. Why can't y'all just sit down? Chuck started to protest. My bad. Chuck started to protest. Where are we going? What's the matter? You scared? No, I just want to stay with my friends. We're going to check something out. Chuck hiccuped and licked his dry lips around his braces. He sounded like a toad when he was nervous. Just leave me alone or I'm telling Mom. You're such a little snitch. Now you're really going in. Pete dragged his surprisingly strong little brother through the entrance of the maintenance room to meet Foxy, the little fox thing, the red one, Foxy the pirate. The heavy door slammed behind them, engulfing them in darkness. Pete, let me go. Quiet, someone might hear, and I don't want to listen to you whining like a baby. Do you know how annoying that is? Pete wouldn't let loose of the vice grip he had on his brother. Of course not. He has to hold a grudge. Yeah. No, it was time to teach Chuck a lesson, I bet. Gotta put emphasis on the right words. It was time for Pete to do what he wanted, and right now that meant giving his brother a good scare. Little Chuck the Chump might even pee his pants. Pete chuckled at the idea. With one hand still firmly on his brother's arm, he fished his phone out of his pocket and turned on the light to guide them slowly through the darkness. The area was strangely quiet, as if it wasn't connected to a boatload, never heard that term before, of people just down a hallway. The smell here was stagnant and musty, and the air seemed lifeless. And Sal is making a lot of noise. And the air seemed lifeless. As if no one had set foot in the place recently, which was weird when the rest of the building was full of activity. Hiccup in quotation marks. Apparently, I think it was dialogue. Okay. Pete's foot knocked a bottle across the floor. It hit something and shattered. Pete and Chuck froze, wondering if someone would hear, but no one seemed to be around. Hiccup. Pete scanned the floor with the light revealing scruffed black and white checkered tiles. Okay, I know which one they're in now. Dusty tables and a few broken chairs were scattered about the large room. There were cardboard boxes on the tables, half empty with party hats and plates scattered around them. His light flashed on a big black spider sitting on the edge of one box. "Oh, look at that sucker. It's huge," Pete said. The spider jumped away and the boys leaped back. "I hate spiders. Let's get out of here," Chuck whined again. "Not yet. There's so much more to explore. Think of it like one of those adventure games you like to play. We have to find the secret treasure," Pete said, laughing under his breath. More like he had to scare the crap of his brother a little more. He flashed the light back down to the floor. It's like even far away, he still makes noise. Pardon me. This is a resume because I had to pause. Something about spiders and trying to scare brother. Okay. Where was I? I hate spiders. Let's get out of here. That's what Chuck said. He whined again. Not yet. There's so much more to explore. I think of it like one of those adventure games you like to play. Yada, 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 yada. Laughing at his breath, more like he had to scare. Okay. He flashed the light back down to the floor. He stopped on what looked like dark melted candles and strange black markings. Is this some sacrificial demonic crap right now I'm about to see? What is that? Are those symbols? Oh, God. Yeah, it probably is. Chuck wanted to know. Who cares, Pete? I care. Pete continued to wave the light around. Then he saw the small stage with the closed purple curtain, and a grin split his mouth. Mouth. Got a lisp today. Dang. Can't even say lisp. Pinned to the curtain, there was a crooked sign with the words "Out of service." Score. Hopefully it still works. Hiccup. Pete, we shouldn't be here. We could get in trouble, like big trouble, like trespassing, you know? That's against the law. That's against the law, Pete mimicked him in a tiny... Mimicked him. In a tiny voice. You're such a nerd, you know that? What are you going to be when you grow up, Chuck? A cop? I'll be sure to buy you a donut on the way home. Pete shined the light next to the stage, revealing a rusted control box on a side table. The cover was broken off the box. This is going to be so good. He dragged his brother to the foot of the stage. Enjoy the show, little brother. Stop it, Pete! Exclamation point. I never knew how to say that word. He grabbed Chuck by the shirt and pants. Oh, my phone just lighted up randomly. He grabbed Chuck by the shirt and pants, giving him a good wedge as he launched him onto the little stage. Chuck crashed onto the platform with an ugh, and Pete would rush to the control box. He slammed a palm on a button that said start. Again and then again. A low hum sounded, followed by a muffled click and clank. Aw, come on, Pete yelled when nothing happened. Finally, the small curtain began to open. Hiccup. I had chips. Sorry. That's Chuck. In a quick motion, Chuck rolled to the side. Chuck, you wimp. Pete rushed to the stage, grabbing Chuck by his sneakers to keep him up there, and the quick moves only fear can bring on. Chuck managed to evade his brother. He climbed to his feet and jumped off the platform and ran. That was the fastest Pete had ever seen his brother run. If he hadn't been running from Pete, he might even be impressed. Pete moved to get him back, then came to halt in front of the stage as his shirt caught on something. Dang, he muttered. He tugged on his shirt and it was caught on a stupid nail. Choppy music sounded through the air as the curtains opened fully. Pete stood frozen in front of a fractured Foxy animatronic that was glaring down at him. The yellow eyes glowed under red brows, and an eye patch flickered up over his right eye. A jaw with sharp, pointy teeth hung loosely as the big fox began to sing a disjointed song about becoming a pirate. One arm had a hook for a hand, and the other hand was stripped of fur, showing its robotic skeleton. Strange sounds of whirling gears screeched and seemed to echo in the quiet of the room. The robot's chest appeared ripped open, exposing more of his mechanical body. Foxy moved slowly, eerily, even though Pete knew he was a robot. His deteriorated body looked to be half eaten away by who knew what. A shiver skittered down Pete's spine. He swallowed his gum. He couldn't move his gaze away from Foxy's yellow eyes as he sang. Didn't know why, just a dumb old robot. You can be a pirate, but first you'll have to lose an eye and an arm. Yarg. First you'll have to lose an eye and an arm. Yarg. First you'll have to lose an eye and an arm. Yarg. First you'll have to lose an eye and an arm. How many times are we gonna say this? Dang. Anyways, the old animatronic was stuck on the same lyric. First you'll have to lose an eye and an arm. Yarg. Quotation point. Pete blinked as a strange feeling came over him like an invisible cold. Heavy blanket was covering every inch of his body, then sinking through his skin and into his bones. First, you'll have to lose an eye and an arm. Yarg, I'm not going to say it again. Dang. The room grew still with a sudden silence, yet Pete remained standing there in the dark, unmoving. He blinked and looked around, trying to remember where he was. He was in the dark, alone. His pulse scrambled as he stepped back. Then he saw his shirt was caught on a nail, and it all came back to him. He rubbed at his eyes, yanked his shirt from the nail, and stormed away from the stage to find his brother. Dang it, Chuck. Pete watched Chuck suck in a puff of his inhaler before he sat down at the dinner table. He could tell his little brother's nerves were still shot from when Pete took him to see Foxy the Pirate. Chuck eyed Pete across the table and squirmed. Pete didn't know what he was so upset about. The little brat didn't even get to see the best part of the show. He'd run away and stuck closely to his friends until it was time to come home. "How was Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, boys?" their moms asked as she set plates of ham and potatoes in front of them. It was awful. We almost died. Anyways. "Fine," Chuck said, without looking up from his plate. "Yeah, just dandy," Pete muttered, swallowing mashed potatoes. "What, did something happen?" "No, nothing," the brothers said together. Pete gave Chuck a warning look. Better not tell. Mom raised her eyebrows as she sat down. "Okay, well, I have something exciting to share with you both. I thought it was time for us to do something as a family, and something that was good for the world." Pete bit back words that would likely hurt his mom's feelings. Bit back, not pit. Bit back words that would likely hurt his mom's feelings. What family? It had been nearly 6 months since Dad had left and broken up their family, and when had she become a do-gooder? Something new, something that represents a fresh start for the three of us as a family unit. Something that could give someone else a fresh start, too. She pulled out a paper from a folder and turned it toward them. Pete read the bold letters in disbelief. "Organ donors?" Mom nodded in excitement. "Yes, we'll be family donors. Doesn't that sound great?" Family? What is a family? How come I've never heard of a family donor before? Okay. Chuck's gaze met Pete's in astonishment. "This is your exciting news? You really want us to give up our body parts?" Pete asked her. She waved her hand at Pete. "Only if something happens to us, silly, which obviously we don't want. But if it did, we could actually help other people who are sick and in need of a new heart or a kidney. We could save someone's life. We'd be heroes." "We'd be dead heroes," Chuck said. She laughed. "Oh, Chuckles, you make me laugh." "Yeah, Chuckles. You're a riot," Pete said, deadpan. Page. Chuck scrunched up his face. "Hey, Mom, you know what Pete did at the pizza place?" Pete narrowed his eyes at Chuck. He knew the little brat couldn't keep his mouth shut. "What did he do?" "He drank way too much soda." Chuck smiled, flashing his railroad tracks. Oh, I'm guessing he has braces. Mom sighed. "Pete, come on. I told you what all that soda does to your teeth." Pete just looked back at his mom. What was with her lately? Last month, she'd started to see someone who called herself a life coach. Then his mom had started yoga, chopped her long hair off, and gone on some weird juice cleanse. She'd also gathered a bunch of their stuff and given it away to charity. Now, she wanted to donate their body parts. "Here, read the flyer, Pete," Mom said. "It'll convince you for sure." Pete grabbed the paper his mom shoved under his nose. The list of organ donations was pretty long. Bones, heart, kidney, liver, pancreas, skin, intestines, eyeballs. Eyeballs. "You can be a pirate, but first you'll have to lose an eye and an arm." And flashback. Pete flashed back to Foxy. He imagined Foxy suddenly walking off the stage and stalking toward him with his big sharp hook, his mechanical feet scraping across the floor. Pete's mashed potatoes did a slow roll in his stomach. Cracking knuckles. Okay. And he suddenly felt lightheaded. He blinked the image away. "What a dumb idea, Mom." "Pete, it's not dumb, and it hurts my feelings that you think that." Yeah, Mom Mom was into expressing her feelings lately, too. He shoved his chair away from the table and stood up as his face flashed cold and hot. "I'm not doing it, Mom." "Pete, I don't want to talk about it. I'm going to bed." Pete walked out of the dining room. "What happened?" he heard his mom ask. Chuck sighed. "Puberty." Hurry up, Pete. This is another scene. Hurry up, Pete. The next morning, Chuck banged on the bathroom door. If Pete didn't get out soon, Chuck would be late for the bus to W.H. Jameson Middle School. If he missed the bus, then he'd have to ride his bike 5 miles to school, and his mom would freak out over his going alone. She was paranoid something would happen if Pete wasn't with him, which he didn't understand, since he was almost 12. Well, 11 and a half. Lots of his friends were left by themselves all the time, but not Chuck. Pete always said it was because Chuck was the baby and their mom couldn't stop thinking of him that way. He heard Pete heave into the toilet, and Chuck stepped back and cringed. Pete was sick, he figured. Chuck's lip curled a little. That's what he deserves for trying to scare me yesterday. Then he let that thought go as Pete heaved again, stepping back and leaning against the wall to wait. Chuck knew Dad's leaving had changed everyone. Pete was angry all the time. Mom kept searching for new things to make her happy. As for himself, he just tried to keep busy. He liked to hang out with his friends. He liked to play online video games, and he was pretty interested in puzzles. Yeah, middle school sucked, but going to school was just a part of life you had to get through. Every once in a while, he felt challenged by a project. Then he'd complete it and get bored again until something else caught his interest. He got why Pete hated him half the time, because Mom made Pete watch over him so much. He tried not to be annoying, but everything that came out of his mouth seemed to annoy Pete. Maybe it was just like that with all brothers. Chuck didn't know because he didn't have another brother to compare to. The toilet flushed. A minute later, Pete swung open the door. A wave of serious stink wafted at Chuck, and he waved a hand in front of his nose. Pete didn't look so good. His face was so pale, his freckles stood out like tiny bugs on his cheeks. His dark hair stuck up in different directions like he jammed his finger in a socket and shocked himself, and there were dark circles under his eyes. Geez, Pete, what's the matter with you? Nothing, Pete spat out. Something didn't agree with me. Probably something from that stupid Freddy Fazbear's pizza. Blah. Say that 3 times, you get messed up. Chuck didn't think so. Do you want me to call Mom? Pete shoved him aside. No, I'm not a little baby like you, Chuck the chump. Chuck felt his shoulders stiffen. He hated that stupid nickname. Whatever, he mumbled. He slammed and locked the bathroom door behind him. Pete chugged an energy drink with triple caffeine while running to his bio class, but he still felt drained and exhausted. He had some pretty crazy dreams last night. He couldn't remember much, only that there had been all this blood. It was everywhere, pouring all over him, down his face and over his chest and arms. When he jerked awake, his blankets were tangled around his body. He'd fallen to the floor, trying to unwind the blankets just so he could rush to the bathroom to blow chunks? Yeah. He shivered just thinking about it, but he rolled his shoulders and shoved that not-so-fun memory away. He probably should have stayed home, but calling his mom at work would have freaked her out, and she'd be asking him a million questions. He decided just to get through the day somehow. He lopped into his classroom 5 minutes after the bell. Mr. Dinglewood, Mr. Dinglewood, you are late, droned Mr. Watson in a bored voice. Note. Pete snatched off his hat and shook his head in a negative. In a negative. Who says that? In a negative. He took an empty stool at the workstation in the far back, next to a kid in a black leather jacket and purple hair. What's with all these kids being so flashy? Pete zipped his hat into his pack and set it on the floor. Okay. Then wiped some sweat off his forehead. He shifted awkwardly on the stool. Why couldn't he seem to keep still? As I was saying, class, we will be dissecting a frog today, said Mr. Watson. You have all been quizzed on the safety rules for the tools and procedure. You will work as a team with your partner to fill out the lab sheet. I expect you all to be mature young people. I know that will be hard for some of you, but there is no funny business here or you will fail.
Okay, we had a pause. It was an incident. And it's back. We're good now. We're fine. All right? Okay.
Where was I? Something about fail. Okay. You have 30 minutes starting now. When they both turned toward the dead frog, sprawled, I don't know how to talk today. Sprawled out in front of them. Leather jacket guy leaned forward. Dude, what's the matter with you? Pete shook his head. Nothing. Leather jacket guy gave him a yeah, right look and picked up a small scalpel. 10 minutes in, Pete yawned. His mouth was dry and his hand was starting to shake from the precise cutting. Leather jacket guy smirked. Hey, check this out, he said, and poked the frog in its eye with the scalpel. A weird liquid gushed out. Sick, right? Then he shoved the blade into the frog's arm and sliced it off. You know what? This is bringing up a lot of memories for this kid. Frog's arm and sliced it off. He picked up the tiny hand and waved it at Pete. It's kind of creepy. Pete shook his head. I need a break. Look, I'm sorry. I swear I'll stop messing around. He held out the little frog hand. Here, let's shake on it. The kid chuckled as Pete pushed off the stool and headed for the classroom water fountain. It took a long couple of drinks. Dang, he was thirsty, and he was starving. His stomach decided to growl then. The stomach started to growl then? Hold on. My reading vocabulary. Oh my god. Okay. And he was starving. His stomach started to growl then, since he'd skipped breakfast trying to make it to school on time. He was heading back to his workstation when Mr. Watson stopped him. Everything going well, Mr. Dinglewood? Last name is hilarious, man. Mr. Dinglewood, he asked. Mr. Watson was shorter than him, with white hair and a white mustache. Glasses hung... This is the cliche characters that they got in this whole series. Okay. Glasses hung on the tip of his nose, as if somehow he was looking down on Pete, even though that was physically impossible. Yep, things are fine, Pete blurted. Mr. Watson frowned, glad to hear it. Now please, return to your dissection lab. You, of all people, cannot afford to fail. That's what I'm doing, Pete muttered, whirling around. It all went downhill from there. Pete took a quick, long stride, and his foot landed on his pack strap, instead of landing securely on the floor. That was when he slipped. Hold on, making sure we're recording. Okay. Losing his footing, falling backward. He felt his toe connect with leather jacket guy in a brutal way. The kid yelped, and Mr. Watson shouted something in reply. Pete landed on his back, his breath knocked out of him. He blinked, and when he opened his eyes, he spotted the kid's scalpel in the air. The small knife must have flown up on impact, but then, in disbelief, Pete saw the scalpel lose gravity and fall toward his face, the point of the tiny blade coming straight for his eye. Adrenaline spurted through his body. With the quick reflexes that came from years of playing football, Pete swatted the tool away with like a deadly insect just as the blade was about to blind him. The scalpel hit the stand of the workstation and fell to the floor. Holy. Leather jacket guy hissed. Dear Lord, Peter, are you all right? Said Mr. Watson, hovering over him like a frightened parent. Don't move. I'll call the nurse. Class, stay seated. Nobody move. Emergency procedure, please. Out of the way. The class ignored Mr. Watson and crowded around Pete as his chest rose up and down with heavy breaths. He didn't think he'd hit his head, but he felt dizzy and kind of out of it, not to mention mortified. Someone whispered, "Way to go, Dingleberry." A couple of kids giggled. Yeah, what a loser. Now we know why he was kicked off the football team. Pete slowly sat up as his face flushed red. Dang, there was no doubt he should have stayed home. Somehow Pete managed to get through the rest of the school day. The nurse had checked him out and given him an ice pack and sent him on his way. It was relief when the final It was a relief when the final bell rang and he walked quickly around slow moving kids through the doors and down the school's front steps. When he checked his phone, he saw he had a new text from his mother. He rubbed a hand over his face. What now? Couldn't he get through one day without her asking him to do something? Yeah, he loved his mom, but now that she didn't have his dad to help her, Pete was always on call. She better not ask him to take Chuck out again. He wouldn't do it. He'd say, nope, sorry, I'm sick. He clicked on the text. Hi, Pete. After school, could you swing by the butcher and pick up my order of pork chops? He responded flatly. Fine. She responded, thank you. Heart emoji. Heart emoji. It literally says that. Pete popped a wad of watermelon gum into his mouth and set off walking to the butcher shop, which was a couple of blocks out of his way. He wanted to get his license, and that was the plan 6 months ago, before the divorce. But now everyone seemed to have forgotten. He finally arrived at Barney's butcher shop during a lull. No cars were parked in front, which was perfect because he could get the order and get out fast. Pete pushed through the glass door and no one was even behind the counter. Sale prices were posted on the glass and some old rock music was playing from the back. He walked into the display case of raw meats, scanning left and right. Hello? He called out. Yo, I got an order to pick up. There wasn't a bell to ring, so he stood around for another minute waiting for someone to help him. When no one came, he'd about had it. He knocked on the glass counter a couple of times. Hello? Page. Finally, he took matters into his own hands, walking behind the tall display case. Hey, anyone here or what? On the other side of the case was a long butcher table with watery red liquid on it. Watery red liquid. What else could the watery red liquid be? Kool-Aid? Okay. The overpowering scent of meat and blood made his guts swish around again. The gum in his mouth turned sour. He put a hand to his stomach as if to ease it. I will not blow chunks. That's saying. I will not blow chunks, he thought. He looked around to distract himself, but all he saw were pictures of butchered animals. What kind of butcher has butchered animals on his wall? When he craned his head in another direction, he was surrounded by rows of lethal-looking knives and cleavers hanging above his head. A new wave of dizziness washed over him. He set his hand out for balance on the butcher table, felt the watery liquid on his fingertips, and broke out in a cold sweat. Wham! A huge meat cleaver slammed down into the wood, barely missing his wrist. Pete shot backward, protecting his hand against his chest, knocking into the display case with his pack. He gazed at the meat cleaver embedded in the wood. The handle vibrated in the air as if the force had been incredibly strong. His gaze whipped up toward the hanging tools. One empty hook was swaying slowly. The meat cleaver had fallen from the hook. Fallen? He didn't think something could fall so forcefully on its own. But what else could have happened? Hey, what are you doing back here? A stocky, older man wearing a bloody apron waddled into the area, wiping his hands with a towel. Employees only. Can't you read the signs? Pete pointed to the cleaver stuck on the butcher table. You gotta get the nah, you can't be playing with my knives. You trying to get me in trouble, kid? Health department will have my license. Again. Spit it out. What's the matter? I didn't touch anything. It just fell. The old man narrowed his eyes. No way these knives fall from those hooks, kid. If that were the case, I'd be missing a lot more fingers than the ones I already cut off. The old man raised his left hand to show a missing pinky and a ring finger. What the hey did you do, bro? With its top lopped off, the skin looked smooth on the two oddly shaped finger stumps. When Pete started to shake, the man laughed. Scared? Never seen someone with missing fingers before? Well, keep your fingers and hands away from sharp objects, kid, and you should be just fine. Maybe. He cracked up again. Pete swallowed hard. Just here to pick up an order for Dinglewood. The butcher waved a hand toward the back room. Yeah, got that in the fridge. Chops, right? I'll be right with you. Pete whipped open the front door to the house and slammed it as soon as he'd stormed through. He tossed his pack on the floor and strode to the kitchen, where he opened the fridge, threw the chops in, and grabbed a soda. He shut the door with his hip and chugged the whole can. The cola soothed his throat, and the sweetness calmed him a little. And you drink a lot of cola. What a freaky day. He took off his cap and ran his hand over his head. He just needed to eat, rest, and forget about everything else. No more crazy dreams or weird kids with scalpels, and definitely no more murder. I got murder in my brain. Or weird kids with scalpels, and definitely no more butcher shops. His mom was going to have to pick up the meat herself from now on. He glanced out the kitchen window when he heard the backyard gate creak open. Chuck pushed his bike in and leaned it on the side of the house before coming through the side door. Pete felt his irritation bubble up. Are you crazy? He asked Chuck. If Mom finds out you biked to school. Someone hogged the bathroom this morning and I was late for the bus. And I didn't pick you up. I'm busted. I won't tell. Yeah, right. You always snitch. Chuck rolled his eyes. I didn't tell her about you forcing me into the maintenance room, did I? Not yet, but I saw how you wanted to tell her last night at dinner. You thought you were real funny. Chuck held up his hands in exasperation. Oh boy. Well, I didn't. That has to count for something. Pete shrugged. Still, you can't be trusted. Dang, even after he's still coming for you? Fine, I should just tell her to get you busted. How about that? See? You are a snitch. Shut up, you are. You shut up, you little twerp. Chuck gave in. Whatever, jerkwad. Whatever, jerkwad, he muttered. He grabbed a loaf of bread from the bread box, then the peanut butter from the pantry, then the jelly from the fridge. He pulled a butter knife from the drawer and started to make himself a sandwich. When he saw Pete eyeing his sandwich, he lifted his eyebrows. What, you want one? Pete hesitated. Don't know. Well, make your own. Pete held a hand to his stomach, debating if he could handle it. You still sick or something? Chuck wanted to know. He shrugged. Just an off day. Why? What happened? Pete snapped. Don't worry about it. None of your business. No freaking way would he tell anyone else about the embarrassing incident in bio class and the flying cleavers. Especially not his twerp brother, who would run and tell Mom and freak her out. Fine. Chuck finished making the sandwich and slid it across the counter toward Pete. A peace offering? Pete lifted his eyebrows in surprise as Chuck began making another. Oh, you know what? See, you misunderstand. Mom filled out that organ donor paperwork for us. Chuck said like it was a casual, What's going on, man? What's going on with you? Fix it! Chuck said like it was casual conversation. Pete's jaw dropped. What? Why? Chuck nodded, flashing his braces, looking almost pleased. She said you'd come around to the idea eventually. But I told her not to. Since when does Mom ever listen to what we want? Chuck took a bite of his sandwich and kept talking with his mouth full. It's not a big deal anyway. You're dead when they take your organs. Your life or soul or whatever is gone. What do I care? Why do you even care so much? Pete didn't even know where to start. Here he was, trying to save his body parts all day long, and his mom was trying to give them away. Yeah, but they're trying to give them away after death, though. It's just a stupid idea. Chuck gave him a curious look. Wait, you're scared, aren't you? No. Shut up. I looked it up. You want to know how they cut into you and take your organs? It's so cool. They split you open like in a Y incision. Then your guts are all hanging out. Then they remove everything piece by piece. He made a face with his eyes rolled back and his tongue hanging out. Your intestines are super long, right? So they just pull them out like a long rope of link sausage. Chuck made a motion with his hands like he was pulling out a long piece of rope from his stomach. I said to shut up. Pete grabbed the sandwich and fled to his room. Time skip. The next morning, Pete sipped from his triple caffeine energy drink as he walked to school. The sun was out, which improved the walk a lot. Today had to be better than yesterday, he figured. Last night He had weird dreams again. But luckily the details drifted away as soon as he woke up, and there hadn't been any spewing his guts into the toilet. So that was the score. He'd barely spoken to his mom last night or this morning. Why had she signed him up as a donor when he told her not to? He didn't even want to eat the pork chops he'd picked up that last night. All they did was remind him that he'd nearly lost his hand. When he passed a construction site, he paused a moment. He looked across the street and decided against crossing with all the busy traffic instead. He'd go right under the scaffolding. Pete scanned the boards above him, making sure there weren't any weird tools that could fall on his head. He heard motorized saws and drills sounding from inside the site, but nothing coming from the scaffolding. When he figured he was safe, he relaxed a little. Just in case, he walked cautiously under the boards, with quick glances above him. One thing he'd learned recently was that he couldn't be too careful. As he neared the end of the scaffolding, he took a breath of relief. Piece of cake. Can I just... page... From inside the site, he heard a fuzzy buzz and then a harsh clank. The hairs on Pete's arms stood up. What the Hell? Because I can't say the word! Watch out! Someone shouted. God, my tone. I'm not getting the tone right here. Someone shouted. Pete spotted something moving fast in his peripheral vision. Something about Perry. His head turned in time to see a circular buzzsaw blade flying in his direction, reminding him of a flying frisbee with sharp teeth. His jaw went slack. His adrenaline spiked. He dove backward as the round table flew through the air toward him. He held up his hand in defense, like maybe he could catch it. Then he realized that was the worst thing to do and tried to pull his hand out of the path of the flying blade. He thought he was home free when he felt it slice into his flesh just above his wrist, followed by a sharp stinging. He crashed to the ground, his drink pouring over him. Air gushed out of his lungs. His eyes were wide as he lifted his arm, watching in shock as blood poured down his skin. Oh man, kids, someone call 911! Explanation point! Okay. A construction worker rushed to his side, grabbing on to his helmet as if not sure what to do with his hands. Let me get a clean rag. Just don't move. The worker ran off and other people started to gather around. Kid, are you okay? A man in a suit stood above Pete and leaned down. He had a phone to his ear. Hello, yeah, there's been an accident. There's a teenager. He's bleeding. On the arm, at a construction site on Wellington and Salisbury. Hurry, please. Don't worry, kid. Help is on the way. Yes, he is conscious. Dazed, Pete glanced at the open gash on his arm. It wasn't very deep, but he could have died. Pete! Mom yelled as soon as she stepped into the house. Pete! In my room, he called out. He was lying on his bed, staring at the ceiling after the paramedic bandaged him up at the construction site. He called his mom and walked back home. He didn't even want to wait for a ride. He wanted to get as far away from the construction site as possible. Now his energy was spent. He'd noticed his back was sore, so he'd gone to the bathroom and lifted his shirt in front of the mirror. As if his sliced arm wasn't bad enough, he also had a bunch of fresh scratches on his back from falling on the sidewalk. Yesterday, he'd had a couple of close calls, but this latest accident was more dangerous. This time, there was actual blood. Mom swept into his bedroom in a flurry of nerves. Oh my gosh, oh my baby. Oh my baby, oh my Jesus, oh my Lord, oh my hallelujah, praise Jesus. Pete, no, she didn't say all that. I'm just messing. Pete sighed. Mom, I'm okay. It's a small wound. I didn't need stitches. Everything is fine. She grabbed his hand, scanning the bandage on his arm. How did this happen? She felt his cheek, ran a hand over his head, and gave him a kiss on his forehead. Paige? We're halfway through the story. Okay. Pete looked at his arm and answered honestly, "Don't know, really." Her eyes went wide. "What do you mean you don't know? Were you not paying attention? Was a construction worker being negligent? Do we need to call a lawyer? Maybe we should go to the hospital." "No, okay, Mom, just relax." Jeez. While it was kind of nice to have all of her attention for once, her anxiety put him on edge. "No, I am not relaxing. You could have really gotten hurt." She straightened and crossed her arms with a determined look on her face. "That's it. You are not walking to school anymore. You can ride a bus or get a ride. Maybe I can change my schedule. I'll drive you and your brother to school. I think I can make it all work." Then she placed her hands on her hips as if she was suddenly Wonder Woman and there was nothing that could stop her. "I will make it work." "Mom, stop. It was just a freak accident," which he'd been having a lot lately. Oh my God, what if Foxy put Final Destination on this kid or something? And every little chance he gets close to anything that's dangerous, he just could almost die. What? That'd be crazy. Which he'd been having a lot of lately. There was a What's that noise? What? Alright, Tina, watch out for that. Okay. Where was that? As I was saying. Mom stopped. It was a freak accident, which he'd been having a lot lately. There was a knock at the front door before it swung open. Pete shot up in his bed, startled. "Who the heck is that?" "Pete, your language." But it wasn't heck, it was HLO. "Pete, your language." "Hello, anybody home?" bellowed a familiar voice. Pete stared at his mom accusingly. "You called Dad?" ? She said, "Of course I called your father. Over here, Bill, in Pete's room." Quickly, she started to pick up dirty clothes that were thrown on the floor. "I have to call him when there's an emergency. Gosh, Pete, this room is in a mess." Like that was anything new. Dad filled the doorway, wearing cargo pants and a t-shirt, with his pocket vest and a floppy canvas hat. There was a forced smile buried under his scruffy beard. "There's my boy. I'm trying to be like you, my boy." "There's my boy." "You were fishing?" Mom asked him, surprised. "No, not yet. I took the rest of the day off, making it an early weekend. I'm here to take my firstborn with me to the lake." "How you doing there, Pete? Let's see that arm." His dad stepped toward the bed, kicking water bottles as he went. His jaw hardened, but he didn't say anything about the mess. Pete raised his arm for his dad's inspection, unsure what to make of his visit. He hadn't seen his dad in a couple of months, only talked to him on the phone a few times. Suddenly, he was home, really home. He hadn't been inside the house in nearly 6 months. It used to be so normal to have Mom and Dad home together, and now it felt super awkward. Dad made a humph sound. "Doesn't look too bad. You'll be good as new before you know it." Yeah, well, I don't think I'm up to fishing today, Dad." In fact, he knew he wasn't up to it. He was sore and he wanted to lay down and go to sleep. Pete gave his mom a pleading look. "Help me." Page. Oops, did I do 2 pages on accident? Yep. Okay, yep, I did 2 pages. Oops. She hesitated. "He's tired, Bill. Maybe another time. It's been a crazy morning." Dad waved a hand. "Nonsense. He's fine. Fishing calms the nerves and relaxes the mind. Come on now. Get ready to go, Pete. I got sandwiches already packed. It's going to be a great time. You'll see." The sun was brutal, even though a haze of Even though? Let me say that sentence one more time. The sun was brutal, even though through a haze of clouds. Pete leaned back in a folding chair next to his dad on an old pier. A cooler sat between them, and an old tackle box was spread open at his dad's feet. Pete's arm was sore, so he didn't do much casting of the fishing line. Instead, he took in the scene. A handful of small boats were in the lake, with people, mostly old people, fishing in them. Every few minutes, the water rippled in the stiff breeze and brought with it the scent of decaying fish and plants. Pete couldn't remember his dad catching any fish at the local lake. He wondered if anyone caught anything here, ever. It seemed weird, fishing alone with his dad. It had probably been a couple of years since they'd been to the lake, and Chuck was usually tagging along, filling the silence with a bunch of questions for Dad. Chuck always had to know things, why something worked or how it worked or where things were made. Pete wasn't sure if Chuck really wanted the answers or the attention, but either way he was used to it. Chuck liked to ask questions, and Pete didn't care to talk much. So, Pete, I want to know how you're doing, Dad said. Pete lifted his hat, scratched his head, and slipped his cap back on. I'm fine, Dad. Your mother says you stopped playing football and haven't been getting along much with your brother. His dad didn't use an accusing tone, but Pete could feel his disapproval, just like he had with his messing room. His dad always acted like it was Pete's fault when things went the wrong way. Outside events, like, say, parental actions, didn't come into the equation. It must be cool to be an adult and be right all the time, Pete thought. Pete shrugged, and even though his dad wasn't looking at him, I'm done with football. It's not for me anymore. The breeze blew, and someone's fishing line flew past Pete's face. He flinched and looked at the guy floating in his boat, a couple of yards away, paying no attention to where he was casting his line. His dad said, all right, that's your choice about football, but you're Chuck's big brother, and there's no choice in that. Pete didn't exactly need to be reminded, but his dad went on. And as a big brother, you have some responsibility. I was a big brother to your Aunt Lucy. Still am, when she needs me. She's got a husband now, so she doesn't depend on me much anymore. At the topic of husband, he seemed to get a little uncomfortable. Pete grounded his teeth together. Too bad he forgot his gum. Lectures were always boring and a waste of airspace. Page. But at least gum would have been a distraction. He stared out across the lake, hoping something might break up this uncomfortable moment. But anyway, sometimes responsibility can be a lot for a kid, his dad said, clearing his throat. You know, with school, grades, and girls making you feel funny. His dad gave him a side glance. Got any questions about girls? Pete's cheeks burned, and he shook his head adamantly in a negative. Okay, well, my point is, if you need to talk to someone, I'm here for you, son. His dad turned to him fully then, staring like he was waiting for Pete to say something big. Pete frowned. Okay. His dad ran a hand down his beard. Or if it's easier to talk to a stranger, I can find you a counselor. What? No, I don't need a counselor. Well, with your wrist, his eyes went to Pete's bandage. What about it? It was an accident. His dad's gaze became more intense. Was it really, Pete? Dun 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 dun. Moving on. Pete jerked back. You think I did this to myself? I've heard divorce can affect families in different ways. I didn't hurt myself, Dad. Jeez. You gotta say it like that, bro. Pete scrubbed a hand down his face in frustration. A fishing line zipped by his face again, and he jerked to the left to avoid it. If only the old guys would watch what they were doing while they were casting them lines, man. There's no judgment, son. If you did, just want you to remember that I'm always here for you and your brother. Pete laughed suddenly and harshly. You keep saying that. I've barely seen you since the divorce. You're not here for me or Chuck. You and Mom expect me to take your place with him. Pete thought he would feel better after getting the truth out, but he just felt bad. There was a funny feeling in his chest, like someone putting a hand there and pushing hard. Dad's shoulders slumped. That's not true, Pete. I live across town, and you know I work odd hours. I'm doing the best I can. You and Chuck need to know that. I mean, I'll try harder. I love you both. Yeah, Pete heard that a lot from both of his parents, but words aren't enough anymore. If Pete wanted to, he could really just cry right now. But crying hurt even worse than getting mad, so he decided on the mad. This, Pete lifted his bandaged arm to his dad's face, was a freak accident. There were witnesses, okay? Unless I use my mind to make a buzzsaw blade fly at me and try to take my hand off? Right. Not freaking possible. Just take me home, Dad. I'm done. Please calm down, Pete. Please just take me home. Pete stood so quickly that his folding chair skidded back. A gust of wind blew against him, almost taking his hat. He grabbed it before it could float away. Then he heard a very faint sound, before something sharp tore into his cheek, just below his eye. Something sharp tore into his cheek? I bet you it's the stupid freaking fishing rod. Something tugged his face forward. Ah, Pete! He dropped his pole as his hand flew to his face to find a fishing hook stuck into his skin. Dude! I would sue those old man. I'd be like, you know what? I'm sick of this! I'm just kidding. He dropped his pole as his hands flew to his face to find a fishing hook stuck into his skin. The hook was attached to a fishing line. Trying to pull his skin off, he leaned forward screaming. Shock and pain flooded through him. His heart was pounding so fast he thought it might explode out of his chest. The line was so tight. Pete stepped forward again to try and ease the pressure. There was only dark water below him, and he couldn't stop himself. I'm going to go head first into the lake, he thought. He felt his dad's arm wrap around him to keep him from falling. Hold still, his dad whipped out a small hunting knife and cut the line. The pressure instantly released. Pete hunched over in severe pain. Blood dripped into the water. His dad held him. It's okay, buddy, I got you. He pulled him back away from the edge of the pier. I'm sorry, someone blurted out. I would be like, forget your sorry, man. Forget your sorry. Get out of here. There should be licenses. This is why we don't have licenses, okay, for old people. How you just gonna... Anyways. What am I doing? I'm sorry, someone called out. Is he okay? The freaking wind blew my cast towards you guys. I can't believe it. Pete, look at me. Come on. Let's see the damage. His dad leaned him back. Pete could barely see the hook sticking out of his face. His eyes watered. Snot ran from his nose, and tears mixed with the blood dripping down his cheek. Oh, this poor kid is having such a hard time. But you know what? You get this because you mess with... You know what? No, I don't think anybody deserves this. Dad blew out of breath. Oh, yeah. Got you pretty good, but you'll be just fine. We're lucky it didn't take out your eye. So I guess Pete had a bad day. Pete and Dad came home, and Mom rushed to Pete. His face was all bandaged up. Chuck's eyes widened. Wow, he must almost look like Frankenstein. But he'd have to save that nickname for another day. What you mean? What is that noise? This is creepy. This is creepy. I don't know what's happening. Okay. Wow, he almost looked like Frankenstein, but he'd have to save that nickname for another day. How did this happen? Mom practically shrieked. Oh, Pete, your poor face. Hey there, Chuck, my boy. My boy. Hi, Dad, said Chuck, and gave a little wave. He remembered when he was little, and he used to climb his dad's legs till he picked him up. Chuck wondered when he stopped doing that. Dad threw his hands in the air. Now, Audrey, let's stay calm. It was a freak accident. A hook caught him in the cheek. It wasn't too bad, so I was able to patch him up myself. Her eyes widened. Another freak accident on the same day? How is that even possible? Dad ran a hand down his beard. Not sure. I think he needs to stay in bed, get some rest. I'm sure these accidents will pass. Yes, resting was what he was supposed to be doing. Mom snapped. It was your bright idea to take him to the lake so he could get hooked like a fish. Why weren't you looking out for him? Dad whipped off his canvas hat, revealing his bald head. He's got a bald head. That's probably why she divorced you, bro. Audrey, that's not fair. He was sitting right next to me. It was a windy day. A freaking thing. Pete collapsed on the couch. He looked dazed as he watched Mom and Dad go back and forth, talking about him. Chuck wasn't used to seeing his brother look so vulnerable. He was bigger than him, mouthy, and always annoying. Now, sitting on the couch, he seemed small and almost frail. Chuck went and sat next to Pete, staring at his brother's face. You look like Frankenstein. Bad, Pete. Does it hurt? What do you think? He muttered. Chuck nodded as if he understood. Pretty bad day, huh? So, what do you think is going on with you? Did you walk under a ladder? Break a mirror? Cross a black cat? Pete frowned. What are you talking about? He asked. What did you do to earn a streak of bad luck? Pete just shook his head. It's not bad luck, and I'm not accident prone, he insisted. I don't know what it is. Chuck licked his dry lips and leaned closer to his brother. It's something weird, though, right? First you were sick, and Mom filled me in about the weird accident with the construction site, and now this fishing thing. Chuck had been thinking about the weird stuff that had piled up in his brother's life. It had all the makings of a really good puzzle. This all started when you tried to scare me at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, he pointed out. Pete tried to scowl, but he winced as the gesture hurt his face. Good. I'm just kidding. What? Now you're trying to say this is something like karma? Bull. No way. I don't believe in that stuff. Chuck shrugged. You can't deny it's weird. Pete was silent a moment, then said quietly, it wasn't just those things. Pardon. Chuck raised his eyebrows. Intrigued. What do you mean? Pete shook his head. Can't talk about it now. I'll tell you later. He nodded toward his parents as if he didn't want them to hear. Chuck went to his room, sat on the floor in front of his TV, and started playing video games. He didn't really think Pete would tell him anything more, but a couple of hours later, Pete walked into his room and sat on his bed. His cheek was puffed out below his eye, and his eyes were bloodshot. Chuck paused his game and just looked at him, waiting. In school yesterday, I slipped and fell in biology class. I kicked a kid, and his scalpel went flying. When I hit the ground, the scalpel was going for my eye. Chuck's mouth dropped open. No way. I knocked it away before it could hit me. Chuck was impressed. Good thinking. Paige. Ooh. Pete looked pleased for a second. Yeah, when you got the skills. What else? Pete shrugged. I went to pick up the chops at the butcher for Mom, and there wasn't anybody behind the counter. So I walked in the back trying to find someone. Out of nowhere, a cleaver falls from a hook and slams into the butcher's block by my hand. Holy cow, that's close. Yeah, really crazy close. I mean, if I believed in weird stuff, I'd think something was up. But I don't believe in anything like curses. Pete frowned. Get real, Chuck. Chuck sighed. Why did he have such a stubborn brother? What else can explain this? 4 times? It's got to be something. Come on, Pete. Whatever it was, I'm done with it. Pete cleared his throat. Just in case it's because of, dragging you to see Foxy. He stuck his hand toward Chuck. Chuck's eyes widened as he looked at it. Pete lifted his eyebrows. Well, shake? Might as well, Chuck thought. Hesitantly, he took his brother's hand and shook it. Pete took his hand back and even apologized. I'm sorry about trying to scare you. It was dumb. Let's call a truce between us, okay? Chuck smiled. Okay, truce. Thanks, Pete. Pete stood up unsteadily. I'm going back to bed. Later, Chuck murmured as his brother walked out of his room. Then he started thinking, rummaging through his desk for a notebook to write in. His brother may want to brush off all of his ideas, but there had to be an explanation. There had to be. Time skip. What game are you playing? Pete asked Chuck from his bedroom doorway. He'd spent most of Saturday in bed, and now he felt the need to get up and walk around the house. Lying in his bed gave him too much thinking time. He kept replaying each freak accident over in his head, and it wasn't cool. Just an indie adventure game. Want to check it out? Pete shrugged and sat cross-legged with his brother on the floor. Chuck's room was a lot different than Pete's. First of all, Chuck actually used his hamper instead of dropping his clothes all over the floor. His bed was made. His desk was clear of extra paper. He had a bookshelf with books on aliens and conspiracy theories. A couple of gamer posters were pinned neatly on the wall. Chuck explained the game. You see, I'm the mage, and I have to look for all the hidden ingredients to make a potion to stop an evil wizard. He has my village under a spell, and I need to help break the curse with the potion and release the village before it's too late. What happens if you're too late? Paige. Then I lose them forever. They remain under the control of the evil wizard, and that is not happening. Pete smirked. You like to be the hero, don't you? It's the only way to win. Want to play with me? Sure. Chuck's eyes lit up as he grabbed the other controller. You can be my apprentice. Why am I the apprentice? Why can't I be the mage and you be the sidekick? Chuck shook his head. You have a lot to learn. Pete turned to their mom, who was leaning in the doorway. She was smiling. Hey, Mom, Pete said. You guys need anything? I'm sorry. Hey, Mom. That's how you said it. I gotta say it right. You guys need anything? How about some popcorn? Could use some popcorn, thanks. And a juice box for me, Chuck said. Pete played the game for a couple of hours and then went back to bed. He had to admit it was nice to get along with his little brother again. After shaking hands and calling a truce, it was almost like it used to be when they were little, when they didn't have a care in the world. Before the resentments, the name-calling, the divorce, he had to admit he missed those days. Before Pete knew it, Sunday night rolled around and he started getting ready to go back to school. To his relief, the swelling in his face had gone down. He'd removed the bandage from his arm, exposing a fresh scab on the wound right before his wrist. It made him think of his dad accusing him of hurting himself. Sure, thoughts of escaping his parents crossed his mind sometimes, but not the way his dad was thinking. Pete had spent most of the day binge-watching TV. He hadn't dared to leave the house, afraid he'd have another freak accident, not that his mom would have let him leave. Anyway, she'd kept a close eye on him all weekend, really stepped up for him. Maybe he'd cut her some slack when she started piling on a bunch of stuff for him to do again. If all these freak accidents had been some weird karma thing, he'd apologize to Chuck, hadn't he? So that meant he would be free and clear of whatever it was. But he still had a feeling that lingered in his gut like a sickness. He worried that everything might not be over, and it might never be. Then there was a knock on his door. Come in, he called out, and Chuck stuck his head in. Normally he'd yell at him to get the heck out of his room, but things were different with the truce. Picking on his little brother didn't seem as much fun anymore. Not that he'd tell him that. Yeah, Pete said. His brother stepped in with a notebook in one hand and closed the door behind him. He fished his inhaler out of his shorts pocket, took a puff, then slipped it back in. How you doing? He asked Pete. Okay, I guess. You ready to go back to school tomorrow, Paige? Yeah, right. Chuck flashed his braces and ran a hand through his hair. Just checking. What's up with the notebook? Something I've been working on this weekend since you told me about the accidents. Chuck walked over to Pete, flipped open his notebook, and showed him some of handwritten chart. There were 5 boxes arranged in a circle, with arrows pointing between them. On the top of the chart was a box labeled Foxy the Pirate. The following boxes read Bioclass, Butcher Shop, Construction Site, and Lake. The final arrow pointed back to Foxy the Pirate. What's this mean? Pete wanted to know. It means I think the point of origin, where this all started, was in the maintenance room with Foxy. Yeah, we already talked about that. From there, each freak accident led to the next, and now, in order for all this to be over, you have to go back and fix whatever you did in the first place. I did. I apologize for the stupid prank, okay? Everything should be good now. You forgive me, right? Yeah, we're brothers. Of course I forgive you, Chuck said, but in all the games I play, you have to face the ultimate bad guy, the villain, just like with the game we played last night. The mage had talking too fast. The mage had to fight the evil wizard in the end in order to set the village free with the potion. Pete forced a laugh as his stomach curled in dread. Bad guy? Who? Foxy, the animatronic? Maybe, but what exactly happened after I ran out of there that day? Pete looked back at his TV, glimpsing an action movie. Nothing. Foxy sang a song and then I left. No big deal. You can be a pirate, but first you'll have to lose an eye and an arm. Yarg. Yarg. Okay. Pete's pulse picked up as he heard the words in his head. What was the song, Pete? He shook his head. Just a stupid song about being a pirate. What were the words exactly? Who cares what the words were? I do, please, Pete. It's important. Fine. Something about how if you want to be a pirate, you'll have to lose an eye and an arm. See? Stupid. Chuck licked his dry lips. Then he grabbed a pencil from Pete's cluttered desk and started writing. What are you doing? Hold on a sec. After a minute, he shoved the notebook into Pete's hands. Chuck had written additional notes under the boxes. Foxy the Pirate Pirate song, lose eye, lose arm. Bio class, nearly lost eye. Page. Aw, shoot, he's doing the conspiracy. But butcher shop. Am I still recording? Please tell me I'm still recording. Ah! Okay. Butcher shop, nearly lost arm. Construction site, nearly lost arm. And lake, nearly lost eye. Pete shook his head in denial. No, he muttered as he started to shake. You're wrong. You can't ignore the facts, Pete. Foxy wants you to become a pirate, and the accidents are getting more dangerous. No, he yelled. Foxy is a dang robot. He's made of metal and gears. He ripped out the page of the notebook and started to shred it. This is all made up in your messed up gamer brain. It's fantasy, not real. Pete, stop. Shut up, just get out of my room. He shoved his brother and threw his notebook at him. Chuck stumbled back in shock, his face turning red. I'm trying to help you. Pete jammed a finger in the air toward Chuck. No, you're trying to scare me for all the times I've scared you. It's always winning with you, right? Well, this isn't some game for you to win. I know that. I'm not trying to win. I'm trying to figure this out. Mom appeared at the door. Boys, what's all the yelling? What's going on? Tell Chuck the chump to get out of my room. Don't call me that, Frankenstein face. Pete's face scrunched up. Oh, you've been waiting to use that one, haven't you? You're going to pay for that. Truce is officially over. Fine by me. You can take your stupid truce and jam it up your nose. Boys, calm down, Mom yelled. I said get out of my room. I am. Chuck scooped up his notebook and ran out. Pete turned his back to his mom. After a moment, with an exaggerated sigh, she closed the door. Pete was so freaking angry, he started to cry. Time skip. Pete tossed and turned in bed. Since his mind was wide awake, his pajamas felt too warm, his blankets too heavy. His bedroom was dark except for the moonlight that filtered through the curtain on his window. As he stared at the curtain, he thought he was something dark. He saw something dark flash behind the fabric. Pete got to his feet and walked to the window, pushing the curtain aside. The front yard was quiet. A car was parked at the curb. A row of trees lined the street. Nothing out of the ordinary. He rolled his shoulders to release his tension, then went back to bed. He hit his pillow a couple of times to get comfortable. Then he stared at the ceiling and stared some more. No use, he couldn't fall asleep. A moment passed as he found his eyes lured back to the window. Oh, 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 oh. That's my worst fear. Something popping up in the window. Don't get up. Don't look. Wait, is this the right one? Yep, this is the window thing. Don't get up, don't look. But he couldn't help himself. Something felt strange. He was alone in his room, but he felt like he was being watched, which was completely stupid. Sighing, he stood and walked back to the window, again pushing the curtain aside. Curtain, Foxy, curtain, Foxy, curtain, okay, just trying to. Relations. Okay, moving on. But he couldn't help himself. Something was eyeing him. Yeah. He went to the window, pushing the curtain aside. He was about to step away when he caught a movement behind the trees. Was someone there? Pete's pulse raced. He rubbed his eyes, blinked, and searched for more movement, but nothing was there. His mind was messing with him. He was freaking paranoid. He took a breath and released it. It was probably just the wind blowing the branches. He scrubbed his hands down his face and lay back down in bed. The wind howled, and somehow that calmed him a little. Then the backyard gate creaked. Motherfudger. Alright, moving on. The gate must have been unlatched in the wind. Right? Just to be certain, Pete listened carefully. An owl hooted. A door creaked. A second later, he jerked upright, his heart pounding. Was that creaking inside the house? He crept to his bedroom door and slowly opened it. He searched the empty hallway. No one was lurking around. He was starting to really freak himself out. Mom and Chuck were asleep. No one else was in the house. Just go to sleep, he told himself. He stomped to his bed, threw himself down, and squeezed his eyes shut. He thought he heard a footstep. Just go to sleep. The floor creaked outside his door, and a chill crept down his spine. No one else is here. He told himself it was just his imagination, but the air seemed to shift around him. The hairs on his arms stood up, and he couldn't deny his unease anymore. When he opened his eyes, Foxy stood above him. Terror sucked the air from Pete's lungs. He couldn't move, couldn't speak. Foxy's yellow eyes glowed in the darkness of the room. His jaw hung open, flashing sharp teeth. Foxy lifted his hook and slashed the sharp tip in front of Pete's face, the metal whizzing by his nose. Pete shoved himself off the bed, his body shaking, but he couldn't get off the floor. Foxy pivoted, leaning over him. The shifting of gears filled the room as Foxy swung up with his hook. You can be a pirate, but first you'll have to lose an eye and an arm. No, Pete breathed. Foxy slammed his hook into Pete's eye, and there was an audible pop. Blood poured from his eye socket as Pete screamed. Foxy's mechanical foot slammed onto his right arm, crushing muscle and grinding against bone. Pete convulsed in agony. He tried to push Foxy off of him. Too heavy, too strong. Pete's heart pounded. Tears and blood ran down his face. Foxy hacked down, his hook tearing into Pete's hand. Stop making noise again. Splintering bone and tearing muscle until it was ripped off completely. Foxy lifted his hook and watched Pete's hand dangle, blood spilling down. Pete screamed. He woke up screaming into his pillow. Since he was finding it hard to breathe, he bolted up, gasping for air. Sweat stuck his shirt to his skin. Sunlight was beaming through his window. He was home, in his bedroom, alone. He spread his hands out, fingers wide, and saw that they were attached. He reached for his eyes, and both were still there. He was alive, and he could see. All body parts were intact. He took a deep breath of relief. Just a nightmare. Why did it have to seem so real? Pete swallowed hard as his stomach turned and he started to tremble. He felt as if he'd had a version of the same dream before, but this time he remembered every detail. With a hood pulled over his head, Pete walked into North Hillside High School on Monday morning and gaped at the huge sign. What time is it? 7:24. Ooh. Normally Mom calls me by this by this time. Nightmare. Okay. With a hood pulled over his head, Pete walked into North Hillside High School on Monday morning and gaped at the huge sign hanging in the hallway. Find your treasure on the high seas. Homecoming carnival today at lunch. A pirate head was drawn under the slogan saying "Aye, matey," while flashing a hook for a hand. Pete nearly turned around and walked home, but he knew how nervous his mom had been when she dropped him off at school. Everything is going to be okay, Pete, she said, like she was trying to convince herself. Yeah, Mom, everything will be fine, he'd reassured her. Mom? Yes, honey? You're a good mom. She blinked rapidly and smiled. Thank you, son. You make me very happy. The truth was, he hoped everything would be fine. He realized that all he wanted was to have everything back to normal, with boring classes, unnecessary tests, and even taking care of his little brother. He was ready for it all to be over, and now he could see that he had an okay life even if his parents weren't together. His parents loved him and Chuck, even though they were often wrapped up in their own worries and obligations. He had a nice and comfortable home. A few friends. He wasn't one of those kids to make the best out of high school, but he'd get through it like everybody else, and walked farther down the hall, taking in the posters on the walls. There were pirate ships, parrot skulls, and crossbones, and pirate heads everywhere he turned. Its student council always went all out for homecoming week. Pardon. He could feel people gaping at the mess on his face, but he tried not to pay attention as they whispered and pointed. He walked to his locker and spun the combo, taking care to avoid a kid in a pirate's costume and an eye patch. He unloaded some overdue homework from his pack, then pulled out his biology book for his first class. Dude, what happened to your face? Duncan Thompson asked him. Duncan was Pete's locker neighbor, a short and stocky dude with Dunkin' Donuts. I just had to say it. Dunkin' Donuts! Okay. Duncan was Pete's locker neighbor, a short and stocky dude with a buzzed head. They used to play football together. For his version of school spirit, he had skulls and crossbones painted on both of his cheeks. Pete shrugged as he shut his locker. Fishing accident. No big deal. Like how? You get cut with a knife or something? Pete didn't want to go into the details. Something like that. Makes you look so gnarly, though. Like nobody should mess with you. You know what I mean? Pete cracked a smile. Cool. Gonna miss you at the homecoming game this week, dude. You would have looked pretty intimidating on the field, sporting a fresh scar on your face. Yeah, thanks, Pete said. Duncan smiled and held up his fist. Pete bumped it. He walked away from his locker, feeling a little better. He held his head high as people watched him, ignoring the stupid pirate decorations and costumes. Yeah, he had the don't mess with me vibe going on, and he liked it. Don't mess with me vibe. Alright. Pete's morning classes went smoothly. He didn't dare get up from his seat during class, and he stayed far away from any sharp objects. When the lunch bell rang, he felt surprisingly good, as if he really did end his streak of freak accidents. Now he just needed to make amends with his little brother. Oh my gosh, I had been laying on my foot for over an hour, and I didn't even realize it. The worst part was that he had made amends before he'd blown it again by yelling at Chuck and kicking him out of his room. He just didn't want to believe what Chuck believed, that it all wasn't over yet. My bad. That he had to go back to face Foxy. Pete shivered. He'd apologize to Chuck and reinstate their truce, and Chuck would understand. He was pretty sure. His little brother seemed to forgive him easily. Pete was really ready to start fresh. As his mom would say sometimes, it would be like a new beginning. He never really understood what she meant by that until now. The sun was out as he stepped out into the school courtyard where the carnival was happening. Food, booths, and games were set up and spread about. Kids roamed around eating cotton candy and junk food. There was a water dunk tank with their vice principal, Mr. Sanchez, waiting to be dunked. A pie-eating contest was set up, along with an arm wrestling table, water gun races, and more. A DJ was playing music and giving away t-shirts. Pete pulled off his hood and walked around hoping to find something good to eat. Not long after he started browsing, he ran into Maria, Maria. Sorry. She was working in a booth. Oh, hi, Pete, she said. She was wearing a red scarf around her head and big, round earrings. Whoa, what happened to you? She pointed to her own cheek. Hey, Maria, Pete shrugged. It was a dumb fishing accident. Ouch, that sucks. Seems like you haven't been around that much. Pete's eyebrows raised. She had noticed? Yeah, some stuff's going on. Everything's cool, though. She nodded as if she understood. So you want to win something? All you have to do is stick your hand in this box and see what you get. She nodded at a large table with a hole in the center. See, I don't trust holes. What's in the hole? What's in the hole? Pete stuck his hands in his jean pockets. No, it's cool. I'm good. She smiled. Come on, it's just for fun. Don't you want a prize? Pete's stomach quivered as he pulled out his right hand, closing his grip into a fist. All the freaky stuff was over, he assured himself. He was safe now. Sure, I guess. Hesitantly, he stuck his hand in the hole, and after a few seconds it was surrounded by something. What the heck? Maria let out a small laugh. What'd you get? He tugged his hand back, but it was stuck. He pulled harder, and the grip on his hand tightened. Unease rippled through him. Sweat sprouted on his forehead. Pete planted his feet and tugged so hard the table started to lift. Pete, stop. You're going to break the table, Maria said. My hand's stuck. I know. Pete, calm down. Maria knocked on the table really hard. Okay, stop. I said to stop. Suddenly, Pete got his hand out, and it was attached to something that looked like a Chinese finger trap, except it was big enough to cover his entire hand. Pete stared at it in disbelief. The stronger he had pulled, the tighter the trap had gripped his hand. Maria looked guilty. I'm sorry, Pete. It's just a joke we've been playing on the students. You know, just a little fun for homecoming. Everyone else thought it was funny. I'm not everyone else, he snapped. A kid popped his head out of the hole in the table. His hair was spiky and he had an earring in his nose. Dude, relax. Take a joke, why don't you? Pete didn't even know what to say. He was that freaked out. Not cool, he stammered, trying to pull the trap off his hand. Somehow it was gripped tighter. It just gripped tighter, squeezing off his circulation. He swallowed hard. It felt like tiny knives poking under his skin. Get this off of me. Wait, I'll help you. I know how to do it. Maria rushed out the booth to Pete and pushed the trap closer to his hand so that it would eventually loosen. I'm sorry you're so upset. Yeah, right. Just get it off already, he said, barely holding it together. I'm trying, okay? It's stuck for some reason. Hold on. She ran back around the booth to grab something. It wasn't just stuck. No. Nay. You gotta be like the makeup lady. Nay. It was squeezing tighter and tighter. His hand started to throb with pain. Not again, was all he could think. Hey, the kid in the box whined, don't cut it. Then we can't use it anymore. Maria came back with scissors. I have to. It's not coming loose. She cut from the open end of the trap until she finally freed his hand. By the time she got it off, Pete's skin looked completely purple and felt completely numb. He opened and closed his grip to get the circulation going again. Maria's eyes widened. Oh my gosh, Pete, I'm so sorry. I can't believe this happened. It's a freak. Don't say it. Don't. Not here. Not now. How could you, Maria? I thought we had a connection. Okay, don't say it. He cut her off. You just shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't have tried to trick me. I thought we were cool. We are. When her cheeks reddened and she bowed her head, Pete's throat tightened. I said sorry, Pete. Look, whatever. It's no big deal. I gotta go. Then, before she could say anything else, he stormed off, trying to calm his nerves as he rubbed his hand. What a stupid joke. How was that even funny? And it was another freak thing. He swallowed hard as his throat squeezed even more. He couldn't take any more accidents. He just couldn't, or he'd lose his mind. A rush of kids suddenly surrounded him like a herd of cattle, shoving him through the doorway of a mirror gaze as they ran inside. Hey, watch out, he yelled. He tried to get out of the pack, but there were too many of them. He just pressed against the wall as they finally passed by, laughing and screaming. Dude, look, there's like 20 of us in the mirrors. Someone called out as they disappeared. Pete tried to get back out through the entrance, but somehow he found himself lost in the freaking mirror maze. That's great. He walked in the opposite direction to get directly to the exit. Instead, though, he came to a dead end, and a pirate appeared in the mirror, with a hat slanted to cover his face and a lethal look attached to his arm. When he finally moved the hat, Pete could see that the pirate had the face of a fox. Pete flinched. He looked behind him, thinking the fox pirate would be standing there, but there was only another mirror. His heartbeat picked up speed, and his brain emptied of every thought but one. Have to get out of here. He turned down narrow corridors, fleeing for the exit. Images of the fox pirate and himself were reflected in every mirror. When he ran, the fox ran. Sweat dripped down Pete's face, as all he knew was that he couldn't let the fox pirate catch him. He was breathing hard when he finally saw a light at the end of a small mirrored corridor, but before he could get there, the fox pirate jumped in front of him, raising his hook. As if by instinct, Pete reared back and punched the fox pirate in the nose. He punched Foxy in the face. Score for you, man. All right. Then the pirate stumbled back, a hand to his mask as Pete rushed out. Pete was practically hyperventilating as he stepped back into the carnival. He was unsteady and off balance, as if he'd just come off a carousel. Kids laughed and stared as questions circled around and around in his mind. Where did I go? What do I do? He stepped backward and collided with someone. He whirled around to see a clown with a pirate hat. The clown waved, but Pete shoved him and ran toward a tent, pushing through the collapse of the heavy canvas. He needed to get out of the carnival, but he was so mixed up he didn't know where he was going. He found himself rushing into a booth with several balloons pinned to a wall. A dart came at him and scraped his cheek. He hit the next one away with his hand. Someone yelled, "Hey, there's a kid there." Pete himself sprang forward to tell them to stop, but it was too late. That was when the last dart hit home, striking into the skin beside his inner eye. sticking into the skin besides his inner eyes. The skin besides his inner. Skin besides his inner. Okay. So was that like the red part? Dang, I would have been so upset. He yelped in pain. Kids gasped. Someone screamed. Pete reached up slowly and pulled the dart out. A trickle of blood dribbled down his face. He threw the dart down and sprinted out the other end of the tent, panicking. He ran into another tent. Stop running into tents. Just go home. Exotic birds were caged inside, tweeting and squawking. A parrot shrieked, lose an eye, lose an arm. Oh! Hey, both of y'all, I'm trying to read a book right now, okay? Are you stretching on me? Get away. Get away. Resume. Pete halted and whirled toward the bird. His body was shaking. What did you say? Squawk, squawk. The bird was bright green with a black beak. It flapped its wings at Pete. Squawk. Pete grabbed the cage and shook it. Feathers scattered. All the birds in the tent started to go crazy. What did you say, you stupid bird? Foxy, are you in there? No, it didn't make any sense for Foxy to be inside the bird. But Pete didn't care. Since when did any of this make sense at all? Whatever was happening to him was still happening to him, and he'd had enough. You're not going to win. You hear me? You are not going to win. Hey, kid, take it easy. Someone grabbed Pete's shoulder and turned him around. What's the matter with you? Pete pulled away from the man, a teacher at the school. Mr. Burke or something like that. Nothing's the matter. In your position. Okay. Pete wiped the sweat from his forehead and blood from his cheek. Nothing. Nothing except for a chain of freak accidents that involved losing an eye or an arm. Nothing except for a robotic fox that wanted him to become a pirate or dead, whichever came first. Chuck had to be right. He had to get back to face Foxy to finish this once and for all. Mr. Burke reached out a hand. You don't look too good. You're bleeding from your eye. Let's go to the nurse to get you checked out. Pete pulled away. No, I'm fine, he insisted. All right, take it easy. What happened to your cheek? Paige.
Ooh, I hope this is coming out right.
Let me see if it is. Hold on. It is. That's a table, by the way. All right. Oh boy, where was I? I was on page. It was like, what happened to your cheek? And then next page. Okay. Too much has happened to me. Pete just shook his head. Too much. How could he begin to explain? I just want to help, Mr. Burke said. What's your name? No, you can't help me. No one can. He's after me, and he's never going to stop. I believe him now. I thought I could fix it all by apologizing. Pete laughed bitterly. Yeah, funny, huh? Like, sorry ever fixes anything, but I had to try, right? Who's after you, kid? What's his name? We can sit down with the principal. Get this all sorted out. You just have to calm down, take a deep breath. You don't understand. There's no sitting down or talking. He's a freaking robot. Mr. Burke's eyes widened. A robot? Help me to understand. Let's just sit down a moment. You can talk to me, okay? Sometimes we think things are worse than they really are. But once we stop and look at the whole picture, it's not that bad at all. Believe me, kid, happens all the time. No, it's really bad. It's bad. I went forward. No, it's bad, really bad. But I know what I have to do now. It'll all be over soon. I have to go back to the point of origin, where it all began. I have to face the villain. Before the teacher could stop him, Pete slipped away. He looked... It's always the beginning. I mess up in the beginning a lot. And then once I get into the rhythm, it's fine. Okay, hold on, am I recording? Yep. He booked it down the school hallway, drenched in sweat. A hall monitor yelled for him, but Pete ignored what he was saying. He had to get out, had to end this. When he shoved open the doors, looking back over his shoulder, the hall monitor was talking over into his radio. Pete missed a step and fell, stumbling down the school's front steps. His knees and palms were scraped, and his body felt bruised, but he pushed himself to his feet to keep running. As he raced across the school's lawn, Yawn. What's wrong with me right now? Ah! Okay. As he raced across the school's lawn, thank you, he dug out his phone and clicked on Chuck's number. It went straight to voicemail because Chuck was still in class. Chuck! Pete heaved into the phone, short of breath. You were right. It's been Foxy all along. I have to go back to face him. Freaky stuff is still happening, but no way is Foxy going to win. Chuck. No freaking way. I'm sorry I didn't believe you, little bro. Meet me there as soon as you can. We can finish this together. In a blind panic, Pete rushed off the sidewalk and into the street. He sensed something speeding toward him, and he turned. That's when a truck smashed into him with extreme force. His body went flying, his limbs twisting, and one moment felt like forever. Then he crashed, his body slamming the hard ground. He felt a crack, then a shatter. The force scalded his skin against the road as he rolled and rolled, leaving a path of blood behind him. Pain was everywhere, then everything went dark. Okay, that's kind of like anticlimactic. We're over here trying to get to the stupid fox. Then when we get to the stupid fox, you get hit by a car. You know what? Time skip. Chuck, you were right. It's been Foxy all along. Have to go back to face him. Freaky stuff is still happening, but no way is Foxy going to win, Chuck. No freaking way. I'm sorry I didn't believe you, bro. Little bro, meet me there as soon as you can. We can finish this together. We're reaching the ending. Oh. Chuck clicked off his phone, looked over his shoulder, and nimbly nimbly hopped his middle school's fence. Then he ran. He had to get to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. He had to help Pete. He pumped his arms hard and fast to get out of sight of the school. When he felt safely out of view, he pulled out his inhaler, took 2 puffs, and walked till he caught his breath. He still had a few miles to go. He wished he had his bike, but he didn't. And he wouldn't let Pete down. He wouldn't let him face Foxy alone. Little did you know he got hit by a freaking car. Anyways, moving on. He started to run again, but that didn't last long. He wasn't much of an athlete. Chuck could run, but it was usually short distances. Pardon me. He always did poorly in the timed mile in gym class. He glanced around and stiffened up when he saw a police car. Oh no! He ducked into a donut shop and waited for the cruiser to drive by. He wasn't used to breaking the rules and ditching school. This was the first time he'd done something like this. What would happen if Mom found out? Would she ground him? Pete would probably laugh at him for being so scared, but that was okay. Pete could laugh at him all he wanted once this was all over. He was out of breath when he got to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, and his shirt was stuck to his back with sweat. He pushed through the front doors and felt relief when the cool, conditioned air hit his face. Little kids were running around as he made his way to the corridor that led to the maintenance room. There was some sort of manager standing in front of the walkway. Dang it. Chuck bounced on his feet, waiting for the guy to walk away. He pretended to play an arcade game until the guy finally moved along. Chuck walked slowly to the doorway, slipped through, and raced down the corridor until he got to the door. It swung open to reveal absolute darkness. Chuck swallowed hard as he stepped inside, and the door slammed behind him. Fear nearly swallowed him whole, but he grabbed his phone from his pocket to turn on a light. Hiccup. He smacked a hand to his mouth. He smacked a hand to his mouth to try and stop the dumb hiccups. He flashed the phone light to the left and to the right. No freaky ghosts, no robots. He took out his inhaler and took a quick puff as he continued to look around. Still the same dusty tables with old supply boxes and broken chairs, like the first time they had visited. For some reason, that felt like weeks ago. Pete, he whispered, where are you? Hiccup. When there was no answer, he wondered if Pete was trying to scare him again. Then he pushed... Really, Thana? Then he pushed that thought away. Pete had sounded really upset on the voicemail. He'd been physically hurt, and he finally believed Chuck's theory that it all began with Foxy. They were finally agreeing on something. Now Pete was treating him like a real brother instead of a problem he had to deal with every day. Pete, are you here? Question mark. Page. This is a page. I'm turning a page. Ooh. Okay. When he was answered with silence, Chuck dialed his brother's number. It rang and rang, finally going to voicemail. Pete, where are... Why? Pete, where are you? Hiccup. I'm here with Foxy, waiting for you. Call me, or just hurry up and get here. You know this place gives me the creeps. Hiccup, hiccup. A lot of hiccups. Chuck ended the call and stepped forward, aiming the phone light at the small stage. A chill ran through him, and he shivered. Instinct told him to move far, far away from the stage, to get out. I'm so sorry, I ate a meatball today. Mom gave it to me. To get out, he couldn't, though. This wasn't about his fears. This was about his brother. Swallowing hard, he walked over to the control box. He would find out what happened to Pete that day. He really needed to know if Foxy was somehow haunting his brother. His hand was hovering over the start button when his phone rang and he jumped in the air. Hiccup, hiccup, hiccup. He quickly answered. Pete? No, son, it's Dad. Where are you? I went to school to get you, but you weren't there. Chuck was suddenly scared he would get in trouble for ditching. His throat tightened. I'm sorry, Dad. Hiccup, Pete needed me. I had to leave. Hiccup, I won't ever do it again, I promise. Pete, what do you mean? Did you talk to him? Not exactly. He left me a message to meet him. But he's not here yet. I don't know where he is. He won't answer his phone. Hiccup. Oh, son. His voice broke. Oh, let me get into that voice. Hold on. Oh, son. I don't know how to do the voices. All right. What is it, Dad? A wave of dread washed over him. Why are you picking me up from school? Why were you picking me up from school? Hiccup. Chuck, there's been an accident. Dad picked up Chuck at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and drove faster than normal to Pete's high school. He didn't ask any questions about why Chuck was supposed to meet there. I think somebody forgot to put a 2 on that. Okay. He didn't ask any questions about why Chuck was supposed to meet Pete there. He said Mom had gone straight to the school when she got the call that Pete had been hit by a truck. Let's keep the ditching school from your mom for a moment. Dad said she doesn't need any more on her plate right now. Chuck felt the guilt like a punch in the gut. Okay, Dad, you have to understand it was for Pete. I would never do it otherwise. I know, son. Don't worry too much about it. Brothers look out for each other. Chuck nodded as they drove closer to the high school. Chuck spotted flashing lights, police cars were blocking the street, and barricades were holding kids far away from the sidewalk. Chuck swallowed hard. Pete's gonna be okay, right, Dad? Dad pulled to the side of the road, a block away from the emergency vehicles, and shut off the engine. He's going to be fine, but his voice sounded funny, like his throat was tight. His eyes looked scared and uncertain, as if he didn't believe his own words. He's going to be fine. Chuck rushed out of the car with his dad. They headed toward the flashing lights. A police officer held up his arms. Sorry, can't let you through. That's my son. I need to see him. My wife is here. Name? Dinglewood. My son's name is Pete Dinglewood. He's the one who was hit. The policeman nodded and let them in. They passed more emergency workers than Chuck could count, and a truck that was pulled to the side with a huge dent in the front of the bumper. Chuck gasped and hoped that dent didn't come from hitting Pete. Little did you know. There was a man sitting on the curb, talking to a police officer. He had his hat in his hands, and he was crying. Chuck glanced toward the middle of the street and froze when he saw Pete's shoe lying there. It was a plain white sneaker, making the blood splattered on it horribly noticeable. All he could think was that Pete needed his shoe. Little black numbers on plastic folded cards were scattered around the road, like for an investigation. Chuck swallowed hard and followed his dad until they finally spotted his mom standing by a gurney. Her back was to them and her shoulders were shaking. "There's Mom," Chuck said, even though he was pretty sure Dad had already seen her. Dad rushed to her side and put his arm around her. Chuck held back, afraid to see Pete on that gurney. He pulled out his inhaler and took a puff before he got any closer. Behind the barricades there were some other high school students. Some faces were in shock. Some kids were crying, and some kids were in Parra costumes. Pete probably loved that. The thought made Chuck's lips twitch, but he couldn't bring himself to smile. "Chuck," Dad said, reaching out a hand, "come here, son." He was crying. He'd never seen his dad cry before. Chuck didn't want to move, didn't want to walk to the gurney. If he could have, he would have gone in the opposite direction. But he forced a step forward, and then another. He felt dazed and in slow motion, as if he was walking through heavy syrup. When he finally reached his dad and Mom, he moved between them for support. Pete was laying on the gurney. His eyes were closed, and he looked incredibly pale. The scratches from the fishing accident stood out like angry red lines on his face, and he had fresh scrapes etched into his forehead. Chuck waited for his eyes to open. Chuck waited for him to move. Blink. Anything. "He's gone, Chuck," Dad said through tears. His words made Mom cry even harder. A man in a white uniform shirt walked over to them. "I'm sorry for your loss. We can meet you at the hospital when you are ready." Dad said yes. "Thank you." The man was wearing blue gloves. He grabbed the large page zipper at Pete's chest and pulled it up, sealing Pete into a large canvas bag. Just like that, Pete was gone. Pete felt frozen, like he couldn't move any part of his body. Strangely, he didn't feel cold or hot or any pain. He was surrounded by darkness. There were distant voices, sounds of movement. "Hello? Where am I?" He wondered. Weirdly, he couldn't move his lips. What the heck? It seemed like a long time passed. Finally, he heard something like a zipping sound. Then a bright light appeared around him. There was a man above him wearing clear goggles, a blue cloth cap, and a face mask covering his nose and mouth. Was he a doctor? "Hey, dude, you got to help me. I feel weird." Pete figured he must be at the hospital. He'd been hurt by the truck. He remembered. He was trying to get to the pizza place, but he'd forgotten the rule his mom had ingrained in him since he was little, to look both ways before crossing the freaking street. Well, now he'd be fixed with some surgery. Relief flooded over him. He'd get fixed up, and then he and Chuck would face Foxy together, and then it would all be over. Finally, another man appeared above Pete, looking down with sad eyes. "Poor kid, so young," he said. "Yeah, I hate it when they're young like this. Really a shame. Gives me chills sometimes. Because of your own kids, right?" "Yeah, I'll be sure to give them an extra hug when I see them." "Me too." You two men lifted up Pete's body and set him on a hard table. "Hey guys, for some reason I can't move. What's the matter with me? Did you give me something to numb me? This is kind of freaking me out, and I've had a really bad week, you know? So please tell me everything is okay." A terrible thought dawned on Pete. "Oh no, did the truck hurt my legs? Will I be able to walk again? Is that why I can't feel them? Why won't you talk to me? Guys, I need answers. I need help." One man put his gloved fingers above Pete's eyes. "Weird. What?" "I can't close his eyelids. It's like they're frozen open." "It's happened before." "Yeah, but I don't like it. I want them closed." The other man laughed. "Suck it up, Buttercup. We have work to do." He picked up a handheld screen. "One good thing says here the kid's an organ donor." "Wait, what?" "Yeah, parts of him are going to some lucky recipients. He's young, his organs are healthy. We've got to work fast, though." So is this like the afterlife? Is he like dead, but this is like his ghost talking? I I hope he isn't, like, alive. Like, is he? I don't even know. No, there's a mistake. I'm okay. I'm not ready to give up my organs. Mom, Dad, where are you? Don't let them do this to me. The men grabbed large scissors and started to cut his clothes away. A few minutes later, music filled the room. Wait a minute. Is this another nightmare? Am I dreaming? Please let this be a bad dream. Let this not be real. Wake up now, Pete. Wake the HLL up. I can't say the word. It's not. I'm sorry. The immersive voice acting went out a little bit. Okay, you got plans tonight? Yeah, taking the kids to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. They love that place. I'm thinking that Freddy Fazbear's Pizza is like their Chuck E. Cheese. That would kind of be weird, though. That'd be kind of creepy. All right. My kids love that place, too. Those animatronic things kind of freak me out, but the kids love them. Whatever makes them happy. Stop, I'm alive. You can't take my organs before I'm dead. Someone help me, please. The first man grabbed the scalpel and placed it point onto Pete's chest. Oh, hold up a minute, the other man said, reading again from the screen. What's up? Oh, thank goodness. Tell them it's all a mistake. Tell them I'm still alive. Tell them not to cut me open. We have an urgent case in need of the eyes and one hand. Says here the kid is an exact match. The hand doesn't have much damage. It'll work, but we have got to put everything on ice quickly. The transport will be here before we know it. Let's do that first. No! The man with the scalpel looked down at Pete. Good job, kid. You're going to help a lot of people. He retrieved small forceps with his other hand. The second man turned on a small buzzsaw, the blade spinning into a circular blur. Let's get to work. Pete began to hear Foxy's music play in his head. You can be a pirate, but first you'll have to lose an eye and an arm, Yarg. Pete watched in helpless horror as the first man leaned down to take his eyes. 4 weeks later. Chuck rode his bike to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. The clouds were heavy and dark, and there was a cold bite in the air. Athena decided to use a bottle to kill people. Okay, where were we? Bite in the air. Bit? Was it bit or bite? Where am I at? Okay, it was bite. Okay. The clouds were heavy and dark, and there was a cold bite in the air. When he'd come home from school, no one was there. That rhymed. Even though Chuck knew the house was empty, he called out, Hello, Pete? The refrigerator answered back with a low hum. The house wasn't very big, but it seemed huge and empty to Chuck. He used to want to be old enough to stay home by himself, but now that he'd gotten his wish, he wished for company. Mom had finally been able to go back to work after weeks of crying. Dad was also at work. Somehow the grief of losing Pete had reunited his parents, and Dad had moved back home after the funeral. One day, Chuck watched them both clean up Pete's room. They picked up the dirty clothes, threw away some garbage, and made his bed, and closed the door. It hadn't been opened since. Chuck hadn't met up with his friends in a while. He was supposed to be home doing his homework, but something had been driving him to go back. Back to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Back to see Foxy. He'd never told anyone what he and Pete had really thought about Pete's freak accidents, how they believed the trouble had started, or why they had planned to meet at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza to face Foxy once and for all. For weeks, Talking about the doll. Okay, Chuck had felt this heaviness on his chest, like he was supposed to do something that he never got to do. Are we still recording? Yep. Like he had a puzzle that was incomplete. He'd replayed Pete's last message over and over since the funeral. Chuck, you were right. It's been Foxy all along. I have to go back to face him. Freaky stuff is still happening, but no way is Foxy going to win. Chuck, my tone! Alright. But no way is Foxy going to win, Chuck. No freaking way. I'm sorry I didn't believe you, little bro. Meet me there as soon as you can. We can finish this together. Pete's death nagged at Chuck day and night. Sometimes, when he was sitting in class, the bell would ring and he'd realize the period was over before he'd notice it had started. He was falling behind in every subject. Teachers stared at him, but no one said much. They all knew he'd lost his brother. They all knew he'd changed. Chuck sat alone at lunch, writing in his notebook, filling it with notes, ideas, and scenarios on what could have happened to Pete, and how they could have stopped it all before Pete had gone. Well, no more what ifs. Chucky and Chick. I just keep changing this man's name. Chuck was done wandering. He locked his bike on the back bike track in front of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. I've been saying this dang name at least 8 times. When he stepped through the doors, the familiar scent of pepperoni wafted over him. The pings and musical game sounds vibrated around him. Do they have that amazing salad? Just like Chuck E. Cheese? Because, oh my God! I would get trapped too. The pings and musical game sounds vibrated around him. He walked through the arcade and saw a group of kids huddled around the game. That used to be him. He'd always loved this place until that fateful day, when Pete dragged him down the corridor to the maintenance room and everything had changed. He walked through the play area and over to the birthday tables and watched a couple of families sitting right in front of the stage. Everyone looked so happy. The little kids were eating pizza, enthralled by the show of the animatronics. Some were singing with their mouths full. The kids clapped and cheered after the song finished. Like it was a great song. My goodness. Chuck walked toward the corridor that led to the maintenance room. He looked over his shoulder to see if anyone was watching. Then he slipped through. He walked slowly down the darkened hallway, past the old posters, until he reached the door. He reached out for the handle and his hand shook. He took a breath and pulled the heavy door open, stepping into darkness. The door slammed at his back, the sound echoing in his ears. He pulled out his inhaler as his breath thinned and took a puff. Not a pot. Then he shoved his inhaler into his pocket and Paige pulled out his phone light. He went straight to the small stage and straight to the open control box. No more wasting time. A shiver crawled down his back, but he ignored it. If he hesitated, he knew he wouldn't do it, and he'd been replaying this moment over and over in his head. He had to do it. He had to find out what happened to Pete. "This is for you, Pete," he said into the dark room. "I'll face the villain and beat the game." He braced himself and slammed down on the start button. He waited for the curtain to pull back, for Foxy to begin to sing. But nothing happened. All Chuck heard was complete silence. That fox tormented that little son of a gun. I feel like a lot of these stories are just about the paranormal tormenting them. Not even actually just them killing them themselves. No, it's just more like a torment, a slow torment. That was the ending of our reading. I hope you enjoyed our wonderful, energetic reading of me half the time messing up words because I don't know what's wrong with me. But yes, the next one or the next episode is Dance With Me. I don't know what this one's about. Never heard of it. I know the first one, Step Closer, was about the fox, but I don't know what this one's about. Sounds something special. And we're gonna read this one next. This one's a small one, and then the last one is a big one. So I'm told the middle is the best, so we're gonna see. Woo. We shall see. That one was a little spooky. I feel like that fox just tormented him, honestly. He didn't even really kill him. And I'm kind of glad they didn't kill Chuck, because if they killed Chuck, I would have felt bad for the parents, because they would have lost not one but 2 kids. Also, what was that scene when he was getting sliced up and taking his eyes and his arm? Was that just like him as a spirit looking at his body? Was he actually dead? I think he was dead. I mean, they're not going to cut you open unless you're dead. So, pretty sure he was dead.
Arg, you never stood a chance.